All right, I think waiting for Dan. Boom, there we go.
There we go. My shoddy internet connection right now because everyone's just watching TV over in this house.
Oh yeah, you have all the different tablets and iPads and all that stuff
Yeah,
going.
everyone is scattered here right now. Just like the internet is just dead. So I just went off Wi-Fi there, so should be good.
Oh yeah, the same sort of thing happened with Adam Douglas last week too. He kind of started off a little shoddy, and then it came around, so it was all good.
Yeah, right on, right on. How you doing, buddy?
Good man, how are you? How
Good,
are you
good.
holding up with all this craziness going on?
Yeah, man. I mean, like there's good and bad, right? Like there's a lot of stress right now with obviously, the summer being in hockey and that off season side of things, and that business being a big part of, my life and revenue and um, it's just weird. Usually at this point, I'm just getting ready to go to like switch mode to like 10-hour days, right?
Hmm.
And so it's weird, but at the same time, it's awesome being around. The kids are upstairs with, my wife in bed watching a movie, and so that stuff's great. But the mayor of Toronto just announced that like everything's shutting down at least now till end of June, right? So which
Wow.
from like all public buildings and rinks and all that stuff. So all of that stuff. I mean, again, I think it's just the unknown, right? So, but at the same time, there's a lot of good things happening, right? Like it's being able to do stuff like this with you and
Yeah.
doing some other podcast stuff and just taking time to try to find ways to grow, right? So although the wallet may be shrinking, find other ways to expand, I guess, right? So
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, it's a pretty crazy time for sure. I mean, from on my side of things, having the Olympics
yeah,
postponed by a year, it just changes. Like I've had a few
yeah,
questions, like how's that going to change periodization? Like, of course, it's going to change periodization. It's going to change everything. Like, we had kind of a plan in mind
yeah,
to be firing on all cylinders at the end of July this year, and now it's the end of July next year. So we got to redo this whole deal. And man, for the athletes, I feel for them
yeah,
hugely, right? Because they kind of had a some of them had an end time in
yeah.
mind, and now that's a little different. So we actually
And I think, yeah, I
lost our
imagine
first
too.
coach.
Sorry, but I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, no,
No, I was just gonna say, imagine just even the sacrifice you make, like being gone on the road with that team too, right? And you're working towards this, and then if you got to go back and do all that stuff, it's all the little things, right? The stresses it puts on the family as well that aren't easy.
yeah, for sure. We actually just lost. Like that's what I was about to say. We just lost our first coach. One of the assistant coaches with the women's softball team announced to the players and to the rest of the staff that he wasn't going to be able to continue with this year delay. So
Uh,
sad, sad, but.
Tough. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. So switch back to like what went on in the house today? What'd you guys get up to?
There was today was a little bit of it's kind of funny. Our days are like, cause I'm still coaching remotely with the Hill and trying to do stuff like that. So, half the time when I'm on Zoom running sessions, the kids are running through the background. And but today was they each got to kind of plan out their own day. So my daughter went on strike from all physical activities.
Really?
So, yeah, she's like, I'm not boxing, I'm not working out. She's like, I just want to do art. I was like, perfect. So she kind of did her own thing with some art and made a disaster of the kitchen and baked and then Caden and I kind of we worked out together and I made a makeshift gymnastics bar and then we went for a run. So it was a good day. So yeah. What
Cool.
about you guys?
Nice. What did we do? So yeah, today was interesting. Like I had a few calls today. I did two Zoom workouts with different groups. The women's kayak group that I work with. We had a few people on for a call there, and I think the kids, like when I was kind of stuck down in the basement, the kids had a tougher time today for whatever reason. Maybe the weather turned; it was a bit gloomier. So when I came up, I sensed that Jackson needed to do something. So I came downstairs and we set up a little picnic table and played ping pong on it, which was
Nice.
hilarious because he'd never done that before, or table tennis.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
but it was crazy to see how, at the beginning, he was just taking these like massive
Yeah,
whacks at the ball. And
yeah.
then by the end of the half hour or hour that we played, he was like, there was a bit of finesse to it. So it was nice
Oh,
to see that little transition. But yeah, and then we played some mini sticks and my wife made dinner and we ate and we watched some National Geographic stuff on Disney Plus and and then they went to bed.
that's
So
awesome. You know what? The one thing I'm getting destroyed in right now, like I stopped. Like in university, I played video games. Like I was a huge like Tony Hawk Pro Skater. Like that was my.
yeah,
It almost
yeah.
caused me to fail at a first year university. And then Madden, and I thought I was still like the man at Madden. Like so, I just started playing against my son, and he like whoops me by like 50 points, like to the point where like he like just mocks me during the whole game. I'm like, this is awful. Like I just like these new video games, man. I'm like, I feel so old. It's like there's so much happening, like so much graphics. I feel like I'm about to have a seizure. But
Yeah, I would have no idea.
I know it's crazy, but yeah, that's the other part. I just get whooped in video games all the time. So
Nice. Okay, let's so I like just like with the last
yeah,
few guests that I had last week, I this all kind of came about. A few of us that chat fairly often were kind of talking about how there's a bit of a lack of people delving into the who strength coaches are as people. There's lots of talk about sets and reps and periodization and all that sort of stuff, but we're kind of curious as to where people how we got here, and then what we do outside of the gym, as well as the stuff that happens in the gym, because that's clearly of interest to a lot of people that are going to be listening. So I have a couple questions kind of proposed or here that I'll propose to you, and we'll see where we go. So number one, a little bit of your backstory. Where are you from? Where'd you go to school and all that kind of stuff?
yeah. So my kind of journey is probably a little bit different than most, but I won't get into that now. But so I guess I was born in Newfoundland, actually East Coaster,
Nice.
and moved from there when I was 5, and then I grew up in Mississauga. So then went to the University of Guelph.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So one of the questions I've asked people too along these lines is, and it's interesting to me because, I kind of had a group of friends that I went to junior high school with who, took, there was 4 of us overall and we all took very different paths. And it's just kind of, I'm curious to know, like, did you have a kind of a tight group of friends when you were younger? And kind of not any specifics necessarily, but where did some of those kind of people end up?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? It's funny. I almost had like 3 different groups of friends, right? I had my sports friends, like guys, that I played hockey and football and lacrosse with, and then there was my high school friends, and then I also worked at summer camps, like growing up, right? So I was a camp guy, as Selby will call me all the time. But so we're actually all pretty still tight with so I have like a group chat of like the 3 different groups, and my high school group chat's like 20 guys, it just blasts,
Wow.
especially right now. Right. So, it's been pretty cool. Like I've been fortunate to have make some really good friendships. I don't get to see them much. But we still, stay in connection, in through the use of technology. So, and then I'm still pretty close. Like probably, most of my connection comes from my university friends at this point.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I had a couple of kind of rapid fire questions that I
Yeah.
was going to ask you, and I know this prompted me because I noticed that you took a sip of something. So rapid fire number 1, what are you drinking tonight?
You know what? I felt pressure because here's the thing. I almost brought a White Claw on. Like I'm a spritzer guy, but I was like,
Okay.
I didn't want to get, cyberbullied, but so my best friend works for Budweiser, so I had to support Budweiser, and so just keeping it super simple and drinking a Bud.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm going back to, so I'm down, I'm trying to limit the number of trips I do to any stores and all that sort of stuff, right? So I bought like a case of these Garrison IPAs, which is a local brewery, local in Halifax. So that's what I'm got that going again tonight. I mixed it up the first couple days, but then, now I'm sort of stuck there. Oh, what's
The
up,
local
DL?
beer scene in Halifax is awesome.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure it's blown up everywhere.
Yeah.
Obviously, I haven't experienced everywhere across the country, but yeah, it's great. It's awesome in Halifax.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And you would know a little bit about Halifax now, I guess. You've made a few trips out here.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that. Like, what would you be
Yeah.
doing out in Halifax, and what's your experiences like been so far?
Yeah. So I'm the strength coach with the Halifax Thunderbirds, the national lacrosse team. For those in Canada that didn't even know that lacrosse is a professional sport. So, but it's been an awesome experience. So we transferred from Rochester last year, and just I will tell you, like, I mean, I was born in the East Coast, but I hadn't been back to Halifax since I was probably 7, and it's been awesome. Like, it's one of my favorite places in Canada, and I just like the people. Like, I tell people, I'm like when I'm flying, so we fly out pretty much Friday night and back Sunday morning, and like when I get on that flight Friday, like my rule on flying is I just sleep. Because it's like we fly or drive. So anytime I can sleep, I'm taking it. And like people just want to talk. Like, they're so nice. And I'm like, like I got the lady beside me, like tapping me on the shoulder, waking me up to have a conversation. Which is awesome. But and then the crowd's been awesome. Like, it's really cool. It's just a very cool town.
Yeah, no, that's like that thing makes me think of a couple of things. So I'm from Calgary, and I moved here about 10 years ago, and my wife and I noticed that same thing right away, how nice the people are, how friendly everybody is. And so some of my family still flies in to visit us, in the summers especially. And whenever they land, they have a best friend from the flight, which it's that same sort of thing, right? Like, everybody wants to chat. So that's nice. And I just saw one of the members of the women's softball team that was actually, they were kind of quasi-centralized here in Halifax for the last 6 weeks, just before this whole thing kind of blew up. So Danielle Laurie, she just said something to me here, but so the team actually was able to go to one of the Thunderbirds games.
Nice.
Kyle and Dana, so Kyle Jackson, one of the players, and Dana kind of helped them out with some tickets. And they were at a game that actually the Thunderbirds were down probably like 11-3 going into the fourth quarter. And then against Saskatchewan, and the comeback was crazy. The crowd was nuts. And I think as much as Halifax maybe hadn't fully fallen in love with the sport yet, that night was like a tipping point for sure. And then it was kind of going to be full sellouts every day after that. So
it's, what I tell people, man, like when people watch the sport, like it's confusing, right? Because the rules, it's not really like any other sport with the rules, but at the same time, it has to be one of the most entertaining sports. It's like basketball with hitting, like that's kind of the way I describe it, and the guys are so skilled because there's not a lot of teams, right? So the people that are playing are like the best of the best, right? Like, it's not watered down. So, it'll be interesting to see the future of the sport and how it, like, field lacrosse is actually like one of the fastest growing sports in the U.S. Like, it's massive, but it just, for whatever reason, it can't get the traction that the other sports do. But
yeah, nice. And I see Jen Salling, another one of the players on the team here, is messaging saying it's so much fun, such a cool experience. All right, that was the longest. So somehow you and I managed to draw out the first rapid fire question for like 5 minutes or more.
I'm sorry, man. I'm the worst. I'll talk forever.
I think it was me. I think it was me. I went some other direction with something. The next one was going to be, you talked earlier about some kids being on iPads and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What are you, maybe either you and your wife or just yourself, what are you guys binging right now, or what are you watching?
Oh man, you know what? I hadn't actually watched anything since this thing started until Ozarks, the new season of Ozarks came out, and I killed it in like a day and a half. Like,
Did you?
Yeah, it's like, for whatever reason, I was like, I have like restrained from watching TV. So, but my wife and I couldn't have any more diverse taste in like it's funny when we log in, like she's like the top of what she's recently watched is like Keeping Up with the Kardashians, 90 Day Fiance, like all this, and mine's like Breaking Bad, Ozarks, like in just the typical HBO type shows. But so but I love Ozarks. It's a great show.
Yeah, I think you and I are close there too. Like, I just finished up Tiger King, which I think a lot of people have probably been
Yeah.
crushing recently, but my wife like watched 20 minutes with me and was like, "Nope, I'm gone."
Yeah, I know.
Actually, she didn't say I'm gone. She said, "Turn the
Yeah.
shit off,"
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
The thing that we the only things that we can kind of connect on are sort of sport documentary movies. Like we watched Catch Every Wave, like the Laird Hamilton documentary that's on Amazon Prime Video the other day, and she loved that, and she's like, "This is the best movie I've ever seen," and I loved it too. So anyway, that was good. That was good.
Have you seen Momentum Generation?
No.
Oh man, it is the best documentary I've ever watched. It's about Kelly Slater and his buddies growing up in Hawaii and how they all they were and they I think I have the name right, but anyways, it's about them coming up as like 10-year-olds, like just taking on the North Shore and like this whole thing, how their friendship broke apart and came back together. And it's about them reuniting as friends. That like it's emotional, man, for
Wow.
because it's about buddies, right? Like that come back and like in their 40s and reconnect and apologize and move on from kind of their mistakes. It's an awesome documentary.
Oh wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so last one of the rapid fire questions was going to be, or is, what was for dinner tonight at the Noble household, and who cooked?
So what would we have? So the family had meatballs and I missed dinner because I was out with the dog, and then I had I had my fistful of protein for Selby and did a handful of cold cut turkey and a handful of grapes. So
Okay.
I am a bad, like I eat for function, man. I'm not like I like the kids will sit down, have these massive meals. My wife's a great cook. And then I feel like I'm running around all the time. And I was like, I just look for my protein. I look for my vegetables. Like I'll take a fistful of spinach and then it's not good. It's definitely not my strong point.
Oh, that's all right. We have some of those types of nights in our house. We call them snacky parties
Yeah.
with the kids,
Yeah.
where we just have a little bit of everything, but nothing. There's no main.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously, currently your main role is a strength and conditioning coach, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, so how did you get into strength and conditioning?
Yeah, so as I kind of said earlier, like my path's been a little different than probably most of the guys that you've connected with in here, and I came up in Mississauga, and I was in at high school, and all they wanted to do was play sports. Like I was hockey and football were my two big sports, and when I realized quickly that I was better at hitting people than scoring goals, I shifted into football, and even that I wasn't as good as I thought I was at the time, but I was probably one of the few kids in Canada that just dreamt about playing in CFL. And, I struggled in high school, got in a lot of trouble, was kind of an asshole, and made a lot of mistakes and, almost got kicked out multiple times. And thanks to a coach and a teacher that kind of had some patience and drilled some sense in me, I kind of turned it around in my last couple of years and was able to kind of squeak into University of Guelph. But again, with my sole intention, like I could care less about academics at that point. Like I was just trying to play football and really, all the way through school. Like, I mean, I was at Guelph for 7 years and, you think I would have my PhD, but I graduated with a general and Bachelor of Arts. And again, and after I spent 2 years living out of my trunk of my car, driving around to free agent open CFL combines, like I was like the Happy Gilmore of football, and realizing just getting cut over and over and over again, that I had to kind of make some decisions. So I ended up going to fast forward. I went to play football in Italy actually for a couple seasons, which was awesome. And it just I think it was good for me to grow up. I was pretty immature and, I kind of, as cliched as it is, I found myself out there and figured out what was important to me. And I knew that football was over. And, so I started thinking I wanted to do something that was meaningful and impactful and try to leave a mark somewhere in this world. And I thought about the people that had the greatest impact on me, and it was coaches and teachers. So, I went to teachers college. And that's kind of when to be honest, when I first became a student, I went to, which sounds weird, but I went to teachers college and just fell in love with reading. And I never read growing up. But I fell in love with just research and did my master's in education and just kind of, met somebody there who introduced me to the Hill. She's now married to one of the owners at the Hill. which is a sports academy. And at that time, it was just starting up. So it was going into its first year, and they needed they didn't even, like, they had a strength coach at the time, actually. And so they just needed somebody to kind of fill roles and live in the dorm house. And so I took my first job at the Hill. I was driving a bus. I was teaching grade 9, 10, 11 science, and as well as food nutrition, and all for $20,000 a year, you know. And it was like, it was crazy, but it was awesome. I'll tell you this, like, I loved my first few years at the Hill because I was just grinding. And so this guy, the strength coach at the time, got fired in my first year. I shouldn't say he got fired. He left on, you know, it was a mutual separation.
Mm-hmm.
And I, you know, I was kind of always helping him out in the gym. And I mean, I just loved the bench press and back squat, to be honest, at the time, right? And so I just go in there and bench in front of the kids and show off, and for whatever that was worth. And then so I went right to the owner after he left, and I was like, hey, like, I think I can do this, you know. And to be honest, like, I had no idea what I was doing. But he, you know, I said I'd do it for free, and, you know, I just wanted a job, and it was cooler than teaching food nutrition, right? So so I went in, and, you know, I was probably, again, like, I was probably a really good motivator, but an absolutely terrible coach, you know. And like, I could get kids to do whatever I want, and it just shows you the danger of motivation, right? Like, I had kids squatting too much, and, you know, just high intensity all day long, and just, you know, making stuff up the night before, and, like, it was bad. But we had a lot of fun, and we threw, you know, and we managed to make it through with no one dying or getting hurt. But I got to the end of that summer, my first year as a strength coach, and I went and spent time with my strength coach, who was my strength coach at Guelph when I played football. And his name's Chris Mumford. He's really good. He's kind of an underground strength coach, but lives out in California now. But just a really good coach. And he just called me out on a ton of stuff. Like, and I just watched he showed me his programs. He showed me, like I didn't even know what, like, a research journal was, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, what is this? You know, like, and so, like, I went to school, basically. Like, I went to school for the third time. And so him and Vern Gambetta kind of took me under their wing. And I just, you know, they both kind of tore me apart, and, you know, really challenged me to, you know, go back to the basics and learn the things I never learned. And since then, I just kind of became obsessed with it, and I loved it. Like, and it's weird, right? Because I hated science growing up. I hated, you know, like, anything to do with, like, academia, you know, at a young age. And now I'll sit and, you know, I'll read a whole book, you know, on, like, you know, and again, just, you know, I read research journal once a month, right? Like, when it comes, probably like everybody else. And it's just whatever the timing was in my life. But I also realized the impact early on that I could have in the weight room. You know, when that first year, just stepping back for a second, I had a kid that lived with me in the dorm house, and he was someone that was really close to me, became like a little brother to me. And, you know, he went through a difficult time in his life, and we were kind of going through something similar to, you know, at the same time. And it was a weird, just you know, the stuff that he was dealing with and the stuff I was dealing with, just becoming an adult. It was kind of just, our relationship was just right at the right time, you know. And we used to run together and work out every day, and just spent a lot of time together. And he, unfortunately, he passed away in a lacrosse game at the Hill in the first year. He was hit and suffered a traumatic brain injury, and you know, really broke me in a lot, like, you know, just devastating loss. And for everyone involved in the Hill. But, you know, at the same time, the one thing I realized was the impact that you can have on people. And that was the one thing that came clear to me, is that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And, you know, but I don't want to just impact people in a personal and positive way. I want to make them better physically, and, you know, from a physiological standpoint as well too. And it just, you know, and that's been, that love has just continued to grow year after year after, you know, the athletes I've been able to kind of get in front of and impact. And that's what's kind of really made the journey unique and stick for me.
Yeah, well, yeah, lots in that answer for sure. I mean, some things that really stick out is obviously, you know, the driving force of helping people and wanting to be there to help people. I think that's why a lot of us
Yeah.
are doing what we're doing. Like we just love to see, have that little tiny, whatever it is, percentage of an impact on somebody with our skill set, and helping them achieve their goals. And that's sort of why I think the ones of us that have stuck around for this amount of time. That's kind of one of the driving factors. And then also the power of mentors, and how you had some really impactful mentors when you were younger and at a critical time. And I think all of us are in a similar boat, right? Like we can all kind of name off our mentorship kind of process, and how impactful that was. And I think for us that are now maybe 10, 15, or 20 plus years in the business, I mean, I think starting to kind of pay that forward a little bit.
Sure.
And becoming mentors ourselves. Can you tell us a little bit about, do you have a bit of a mentorship program where you're at right now?
You know what? So we used to have an internship program, and we still do in kind of case by case scenario. But I'll say my last intern was Selby, actually, Alan, who was your guest a couple nights ago, and so I've been I always try to keep our gym doors open. We have a lot of people that want to come by and just check out and see what we're doing. The mentorship thing, I didn't feel like I had enough time to give after Alan kind of left. My heart was still healing, and so but our schedule is just so chaotic at the Hill. But the one thing that we've tried to do is do education, and we've thrown a few conferences as well, and hosted some really cool events, and been able to connect with people through that. And again, just connecting with other coaches, I find, has been just a big difference maker in my career, and just building a love for even seeing you guys, in the summer at USOC, right? Like it just, come away from things like that, and you're like, it shows you, just like, athletes are inspired by other athletes that are working hard and doing the right things. When other coaches get around each other, it's inspiring, right? And you see people doing cool shit, and you're like, I want to do that. You know what I mean? Like, and like seeing Corey get that job with the Cubs, like it's fucking awesome. Excuse language, but it's just, all that, and seeing everyone kind of go on and do stuff, and the success Adam's had, and you have, the chance to go to the Olympics. Like that's the stuff that us as strength coaches, that's what we hold on to and what we dream about, right? So I think that's the thing that excites me the most, was just connecting people and doing exactly what you're saying, like hearing their stories and hearing what they're doing. And sometimes egos get in the way, but when you get around some really good people, it's a pretty awesome community.
Yeah, 100%. I think that was another impetus for doing these chats is like, man, we've had some cool, I've gone to tons of conferences in the last 15 years. I'm sure you have as well. But, 90% of the time I'll come back and be like, oh, the best part of that conference was hanging out with the other coaches afterwards, having a beer or two, and, just talking about, talking shop a bit, but talking about life. And I think that's been huge. Yeah,
for sure. Absolutely.
Moving, we talked a little bit about what got you to where you're at right now. What did you think you were going to be when you grew up? If you went back to a young Dan Noble and asked him, what did you think?
Honestly, it was probably a football player. If I was like, again, like I was obsessed with football. Like I slept with a football till I got married, and my wife didn't get it out of our head. And now I realize how dangerous of a sport it is, and I don't even know if I'd let my own kid play. But that was probably it. That's a firefighter, but then I realized I don't like blood, so I was kind of like, I don't know if I could do it.
Nice, yeah. There's been a couple of firefighter references in the last week with people, including myself, actually. So yeah, it's something that you think. I mean, a lot of kids think about stuff like that. So you talked a little bit about the Hill, like you've mentioned the Hill Academy and where you're at. So tell us a little bit more about where you work right now and what sort of the day-to-day life is like for you, maybe given different times of the year, and the populations you work with. Yeah,
so so I've been at the Hill Academy now for 14 years. And, for those that don't know, it's a sports academy kind of, in similar to what most people would know as like an IMG, but at the same point, very different. I think, we're a family business, and that probably goes, goes through the veins of everything we do. It's a very connected school, and so we have basically our kids come. We're just under 200 student athletes now, and our kids will come to school there every day. But in the mornings they'll do their sport, whether it's hockey or lacrosse, and then instead of going to like a regular phys ed class, they come and see my staff. Our staff's made up of 4 other coaches and a physio chiro. And then from there, we program from grades 5 all the way up to grade 12. And so we are coaching a lot. We coach, again, the interesting part I always think back to is up until probably 7 years ago, I had 170 athletes and it was by myself. So I was coaching coaching all those guys by myself, testing them by myself, and doing, so it's always a cool, interesting journey, and then seeing where we're at now. But I have a great staff, shout out to Andrew Abes and Dre Galisic and Paul Dawson and the rest of our staff there. But, people, Damon Edwards, and I'm not going to get in trouble. I'm forgetting people's names, but
it's like an Oscar speech.
I just blame the CTE. But so that's one component. And then the Hill and I are partners in the facility that we use, and that partnership's called Hill Performance Training, and that is for our outside athletes. So in the outside, so in the off season, in the summer, we work with everywhere from professional athletes to collegiate athletes to athletes. And so we're a year-round facility, but it changes. Our clientele is always athletes. We don't do any gen pop stuff. We've been fortunate to kind of do what we're passionate about, and but we've we grew the offside, the business in the summer. I started with 2 athletes in a backyard, and now we're up to about 100 athletes in the summer, which has been a pretty cool journey as well.
Yeah, nice. Okay, move maybe a little bit away from the weight room again. What is your favorite non-strength and conditioning hobby?
My favorite hobby would probably be, at this point, surfing, even though I'm terrible at it.
Yeah.
I had a lifelong goal to be able to surf a barrel by the time I was 40. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. Rather than me, I might just grow a barrel instead, so it's, but I've come close. And so my family, we try to go on 2 surf trips a year, and my kids surf too. And I think you and I have connected on that too. I saw your kids up on it's awesome. And I just love the ocean. I'm a big snowboarder as well too. And the oceans and the mountain are kind of where I clear my head and reconnect. And so any chance I can get where I can get in the water, I'm pretty excited about.
Where's your most recent surf trip been?
It's kind of like the summer is such a grind for me, and I know that sounds super, I sound like a jerk saying that, but we actually, and I'll explain that hack in a second, but the summer's so crazy because I'm coaching all day, and I don't get to see the kids and my wife as much. So we go in October, which is kind of the shoulder season for Hawaii. So we actually have found a way to really do Hawaii pretty cheap, and so we take the kids out of school for 2 weeks, and we go for 2 weeks, and we've been doing that for, I think, the last 6 years now. And it's nice because the waves in October aren't super huge. Yeah. But then as you get in November, you get massive winter waves, right? So, but that we were in Kauai. My wife and I were in Kauai just, I want to say a few months ago, 4 months ago. Yeah.
Nice. We went to Hawaii about a year and a half ago as well. We were on the Big Island though.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, man. So that was the first time I'd been to the Big Island, and it's 4 different climates in one, basically. You can go up to the top of Mauna Kea, and it's 14,000 feet. It's it's winter. You can be on one side of the island, and it's a desert. The other side's a tropical rainforest, and then the lava fields are throughout the whole island as well. So it's nuts, for sure.
It's a special place, man. I highly recommend for everyone to go. It's it's one of the last untouched places in this world, especially Kauai. It's it's still just so you feel like you're in some sort of imaginary world.
Yeah, Cool, man. We talked when I was talking to Selby last week. I somehow stumbled upon telling the story about how I basically exploded my hamstring in front of a whole team that I was working with, and how that was, some forced vulnerability. Are there are there any kind of, not necessarily embarrassing, but some of those types of stories that you have that you'd be willing to share?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, for sure. The people that know me, I put myself out there quite a bit. I'll say one. I was actually thinking about this outside. One of the first conferences I spoke at. I don't know if I was just being overconfident or what, but I was doing a practical, and it couldn't have gone worse. Like, it was like the worst practical. And I had this plan in my head of to show progressions and regressions and be able to tweak and individualize movement on the spot. And so I was like, I'll take anybody, any volunteers who wants to do it. I'm gonna coach you up right now. And I must have got the two most unathletic people that you could ever imagine. And one woman was like, and again, like, bless her heart for wanting to do it, but like, I don't think, like, she was going into her second career. She was like a lawyer. She'd smoked for 40 years of her life, and then she was come back, and she was in great shape, but like, there's a difference between doing, and I was doing like plyometrics and like some pretty high intensive movement stuff. And the first guy couldn't stop, like, and so he bowled over and like took people, like, it was awful, man. And and it was just that crazy dead science. And I know you probably know this when, like, if you're presenting, where it's just like, I've got 30 minutes left of this, and I'm like, I've got nothing left, So like, I had to, like, revert to like doing some really simple stuff, and it was just like, I'd never sweat so much in my life, and just in my head, like, it was awful. And but it was one of those things where I was like, it forced me to get back to saying, like, I need to be overly prepared for these things. And then I think I've had a few times where I've tried to lift too much in the weight room, try to show off a little bit. I've pinned myself a couple times, So
Yeah.
But outside of that, like, there's been quite a few embarrassing moments. So
Yeah, no, good story though, for sure.
yeah.
Okay, so now Alan Selby is chiming in here, and he texted me this a couple hours ago. Then he sent it in the questions box for me, and then now he's gotten a little bit. He's tired of waiting, so he put it on the chat. So while we're on stories, tell the story of when you chased the guy stealing the car, or when you chased the guy stealing from the change rooms.
Yeah, this too. So I must not be seeing this. It only shows me like that. I've only seen it. It looks like no one's even logged on. I feel like it's just you and I here. My stuff
Oh
must
no,
be
there's lots of
frozen
stuff
here.
down there.
Okay, so I'm missing it all. I can't see any of it. But so anyways, it's yeah. So the change room one is actually pretty good. Like, it's so I'm coming back from a meeting, and I'm driving into, and our school's in a hockey rink, and the school classrooms are in the back. And we've had issues with this like theft and the same guy over and over, and he's been blatantly, and we've caught him on camera. And so I'm driving into the parking lot, and I see our students chasing this car through the driveway, and I'm like, and I see them start yelling at me. That's him, and like, I don't know what, like, what I was thinking at this time, but like, I like full on, like, movie, like, slammed on the brakes, squeaked in like a full like dry U-turn, like, and then just started chasing this guy down Rutherford Road. And so, like, we're going and weaving in out of traffic, going like 100 down Rutherford Road, and like, so he rips, and we're on our way into like King City, and like, in the middle, I've been chasing this guy for like 20 minutes. I'm on the phone with like I'm on the phone with 911, and 911, I'm like, on the phone, I'm like, I'm in hot pursuit of an theft. They're like, she's like, excuse me, sir, you're in hot pursuit? I'm like, yeah, like, I'm chasing this guy. They're like, what do you mean you're chasing him? Like, on foot? I'm like, no, I'm like right on him. She's like, sir, you need to stop right now.
You need to stop
I'm
right
not
now.
So I chased this guy until and so we got to a red light. And then we got to a red light, and I jumped in my car, and I grabbed him. I jumped in his car window and grabbed him. And then I was like, what am I gonna do here? I'm like, I had no plan up to that point. And then luckily the cops showed up. But then the cops came, and the cops were like, I thought I was gonna get tased, because they just see this big guy jumping in a car, right? So
Yeah.
And then the other one is, as quickly as, you know, uh, last winter I woke up at like 7 in the morning, and it was after a big ice storm. And I I look out my window, and our Forerunner's running, like a truck is running. And I said to my wife, I was like, "Oh, that's great that you started a truck. I really appreciate that." And she's like, "I didn't start a truck." And I'm like, "Yes, you did. Like, it's running. It's in the driveway. Like," I'm like, "Why can't you just say thank you? Like, you're welcome, right?" And she's like, "There's no way I'm going outside. It's -20." I'm like, "Okay." And I'm like, "Well, our truck's running." And then Crystal comes over. She's like, "There's somebody in our truck." And I go out there and I see it. I'm like, so I run outside, and I'm in my pajamas basically, and like barefoot. And I open the door, and this guy, like, he like looks at me and goes, "What's up?" And I'm like, "What's up?" I'm like, "You're in my car. Like, what are you doing?" And then he like casually like gets out of the car and goes. So I go to run around and chase him down. And so like, and then again, like, I don't know what I'm thinking. I kind of blacked out, and he jumps in this like their getaway car, right? Like, I know it sounds like a movie, but like he's got his buddy in a car. So I jumped on their car hood, and as they're moving, I'm trying to punch in their window. And this is dumb. This is really dumb. Kids don't do this, right? So I'm punching in the window, and they're dragging me down the road, and we're going. My hand split wide open. There's blood everywhere, and so then again, like the window is like shattered but not breaking, right? Like, it's one of those cracks. So
Yeah.
my hand's just done. Like, it's not smart. And so then I'm like, there's kids everywhere. Like, I got to jump off this car. I'm gonna get pinned, or like, or this guy's gonna run a stop sign. So I get off the car, and like there's blood everywhere. And like I turn around and look at every soccer mom in our neighborhood was out on the street, and like just been like,
Oh shit.
and I'm like, did anyone happen to call the police? And they're like, no, we just really were shocked that this was happening. Like, what were you thinking? And I was like, I don't know. It was a bad call, and I probably could have got hurt. And so yeah, that's that story.
Yeah, for sure. So are you now like the hero of the neighborhood, or that
I don't
crazy
know.
guy on the hood?
I think I'm the crazy guy in the hood. Like, I'm pretty sure some play dates have been canceled, and I'll say this though, no one's ever taken my parking spot in the street since then, though. So I feel like that line's
That's true.
been drawn. So I'll take that. But yeah.
Very nice. Okay, so we're kind of probably getting close to wrapping up. So if anyone else that's listening right now has any questions for Dan or for us, go ahead and throw them up there while I ask. You kind of already spoiled this one. Usually the last question that I ask is, what's like your go-to drink?
Yeah.
But maybe you can tell us a little bit about the White Claw story, or how you got into White Claw.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like since I had my first beer at 15, I've always faked liking beer. Like, I've never liked it. And I was like, my buddies were chirping the other day. It was like how I used to fake chug beer in high school, and like, and then, like, put my tongue in the end, because it was just like, and I'd fill it with water at parties. But and again, I probably shouldn't be saying this stuff, but so then I discovered like light spritzers, and I was like, this is fantastic, low in calories, a little bit of vodka, and very refreshing and flavorful.
Nice. All right, we got one question here coming up from Ryan McDonald, who was actually my first guest back Monday last week, on sitting on couches with strength coaches, and sadly Ryan's is the lost episode. That's the episode that I didn't record in any fashion,
Oh,
so it's gone. That's okay though. It's like a Babe Ruth rookie card or something like that. Anyway, so he asked, what's the best non-technical professional development you've done?
Non-technical professional development. Honestly, like, does he mean like non-strength conditioning, like non-direct?
Probably, yeah.
Field? You know what I tell people? I go, so I actually, when I went back to, like, in Guelph, like and when I finished my 5th year, like, all my buddies graduated, and I was like, well, I'm like, how did you guys? So I remember this. Everyone got the letters that you need to go report to graduate. I was like, I didn't get a letter. And I went to, so I went to the administration office, and I was like, oh, I want to graduate too. And they're like, that's nice, but you don't have enough credits. And I was like, so I had to take I took a minor in drama, actually. And so I went back in my last university. I took almost all drama courses, and I'll say, and as funny as it is, like those courses really pushed me and my ability to communicate, and as well as just like being comfortable in front of people, right? Like, and I think, again, for me personally, one of my greatest strengths as a coach is just to be in front of people and connect and be vulnerable. And I think that's something that really stuck with me. And I'll say the other one I did, I sold cell phones at Wireless Wave in university. And again, the being forced to sell something to someone that they don't really need and asking them questions and trying to understand them. I find those two things, and being a camp counselor, I would say that the third one, have really helped define what I do now and how I'm at it. So, yeah, I know those are so random, but
Well, you know what? The drama reference is actually funny because for anyone that's listening right now that was at the kind of Whistler performance hang last spring, pretty much a year ago, like now, I guess, the kind of Jeremy Shepherd and that crew put on in Whistler. There was a British athletics coach out there named Fuzz Cam, who is actually a member of the like Royal Academy of Drama in the UK as well. And his whole presentation, if you can call it that, was on communication and the importance of nonverbal communication, verbal communication, and how you get your point across. And a lot of that he drew from his experience in drama school. So I think that's really neat. That's cool. It's cool to hear. Have you ever heard of Fuzz Cam before?
No.
You gotta Google him or look him up, because he's a very, very like good engaging presenter and speaker. And he was awesome. So we got a question. Oh yeah, and Ryan McDonald was there. He said, and don't ever wear plaid. And that's a story that I got to tell. So apparently, I won't go into the full details, but apparently in the UK, in Canada, especially in Whistler in the spring, plaid is going to be one of the main pieces of clothing that's being worn, by plaid shirt. And he's like, he looks out in the crowd, and one of the first things he says was something along the lines of, who wears plaid? Like, if you're wearing plaid in the UK, you're so and so. So anyway, but yeah. Laura Stacy's asking, who is your favorite athlete to train? That might be a trick question.
Yeah, that might be a trick question. You know what? I will say, I'll give Laura a shout out there. Laura's one of all those. You know what? I think you and I have talked about this before, but training female athletes has been something I've really taken a lot of pride in, and and Laura's kind of started that, and then being a father of a daughter, and just doing whatever I can to try to empower this generation of female athletes to build a platform for all these little girls that come. And Laura's been a big inspiration to that. Just, Laura came into, just a quick story, but, Laura joined our pro group 2 summers ago, and she took, her effort and attitude, whatever it was, she took our group to like the next level, and it was just, and she was the only girl in the group, and had instant respect, and now she's kind of, she left us though for, she moved away, and so she's no longer allowed to be the favorite athlete. So I'll have to defer that to somebody else at this point.
Yeah, man, because I've worked with female athletes now for a long time, and I started, some of the first that I worked with were women's hockey players, Jill Saunier and Blair Turnbull. I worked with them for 6 and 8 years, respectively, I think. And yeah, it was just amazing. Like, the work ethic, the attitude, the how they come to the gym or how they come to the field or whatever it is every day was awesome. And I've seen that now with the whole softball team. I travel with them a bunch, like we kind of alluded to earlier. And, I can't, I'll try to pick up an equipment bag to carry it from the field to the car. And I can't, but someone would tackle me to make sure I'm not carrying a bag. And I'm like, come on guys, I'm here. Let me help you at least. And it's like, no, coaches don't carry. So anyway, it's great. It's awesome. So some of these sports are great. And the athletes we get to meet through them are awesome for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we don't have any more questions. We've been on here for 50 minutes, which now we found out last week with Adam that we're going to get booted in 10 minutes. But I don't know, Dan, do you have any questions? Do you have a question for me in closing?
Yeah, I mean, what's next for you in your journey, man? Like you've been with, I know you kind of bounced around from the national organizations a little bit and moved, and not bounced around, but kind of moved from Calgary now to the east. Like, what's your end goal? Like, where do you hope to end up, and what does that look like for you?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. So I think that now that it's now not Tokyo 2020, it's 2021. I feel like I'm going to stick around with the sports that I'm working with as long as they'll have me, I guess. And kind of see this quadrennial now 5 years through to the end. And hopefully I'll get to see some of these athletes standing on the podium at the Olympics, which is obviously their goal. And if all goes to plan, or at least what was the plan, I'll be there in Tokyo with them. So that'll be cool. And I'll hopefully have athletes in multiple sports, gymnastics, kayak, and softball that I've been kind of with through for at least 5 years. Some of them much longer leading into that. So that'll be really cool. But after that, it's up in the air, man. Like I've started talking to a couple of potential supervisors for PhD programs at a couple different schools. I'm kind of, as much as I love coaching and I love being in the weight room, some of the things that really excite me is actually seeing the results that are happening. And like, so what I'm kind of curious more and more about is, the statistics side of things, the data science side of things. And that's kind of where I'm thinking of going if I can somehow swing a PhD with 3 kids and try to maintain mortgage payments and that sort of stuff. So that's kind of the direction that I'm looking at right now. And if I can in 10 years, if I can be still providing some sort of assistance or some sort of help to national sport organizations, maybe from more of an outside contractor standpoint, maybe teaching some classes in a university, and still getting to work with a few athletes. I think that would be ideal for me. So that's my 10-year plan if it's possible.
It's awesome, man. Well, I know, just you pump your tires a little bit, man. I love every time I get to watch you work with the athletes on social media. You've got a great way of programming, and just I think you got great content, as well as you've done a great job with one of our athletes, Kyle Jackson, and he can't say enough about you. And I think it's been a really cool thing to be able to just pass athletes off to other coaches and just be like, man, go do your thing. And so thank you for all your help with that. And man, it'll be exciting to see, and hopefully Tokyo happens, man.
Yeah, I know. Awesome. It's still a little bit up in the air. No, it's nice though, man. And it's great to work with. And so Kyle's like the only guy that I work with right now, which is kind of hilarious. Literally, he actually is the only guy that I think that I work with right now. But like my daughter had her 5th birthday party yesterday, which is a crazy time to have a birthday, right? Where you can't have a party and you can't have people over. But Kyle was one of the few like her friends that did the drive by. Her and Kyle and Dana came, did the drive by, had a sign. Jackson was out in the front yard playing with his lacrosse sticks. So Kyle gave him a ball and gave him some, Dana gave him some Thunderbirds gear. So
that's awesome.
Anyway, awesome to have people like that in the community. And I thank you for, for trusting me to work with them.
No, absolutely, brother.
Yeah. So it looks like we're done other than some people talking about, is it a pentennial or a quintennial? Now instead of a quadrennial. But yeah, so Dan, it was awesome. Oh, okay, we got one.
You, brother. Oh.
Oh, never mind. I've got it was great to have you on, Dan.
I feel like I got robbed from seeing all these comments. I'm literally, all I see is Corey waving a hand, and that was it. That's all I saw.
That's crazy. I wonder why it froze on you. That's weird. I'm scrolling through them. There was a decent number actually. I bet we had. I would hazard a guess of like 15 Olympians we had tune in today. So that was fun.
And you definitely,
yeah, exactly. And you definitely set the record for the top single or top at any 1 point viewers, which was in the mid-20s. So we're really pumping it up now.
I'm gonna rub that in Adam's face now.
Yeah, sorry for everybody else. All right,
That's
Dan, thanks a
awesome.
lot, man.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. That was great
Talk
stuff.
to,
Thank you.
yeah, talk to everybody. Bye.